Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a great St. Patrick's Day. I know I did. But my name is Sarah, and in this video, I'm going to be covering life, diversity of life, and the classification system. Since biology is the study of life, you may ask yourself, what exactly is life? Well, scientists haven't been able to agree upon a standard definition of life because for every definition that is put out there, there's always going to be an exception. However, they have been able to agree on some common characteristics that all forms of life share. These characteristics include organization. Life is highly organized. Homeostasis, which is the maintenance of a constant internal environment, such as temperature, water concentrations, things like that. Adaptation, which is the ability of an organism to survive in their environment. Reproduction and heredity. You have to be able to pass your genes on to future cells in order to ensure the survival of your species. Growth and development. Energy acquisition and release. Response to stimuli, and interaction with your environment. Although life is similar in some ways, there are millions of different types of living organisms, and in order to identify and study these organisms, scientists have organized them into groups. This is called classification, also known as the study of taxonomy. The first person to do a large-scale classification of organisms goes by the name of Carl Linnaeus. He made up this system in 1753, and he started off by organizing things by structure and anatomy and things like that. And there are 7 categories, kingdoms being the broadest and species being the most specific category. The basic unit of classification is species, and species are groups of similar organisms or individuals that can mate and produce fertile offspring. Some examples of species would be red wolves, or humans are their own species, or African elephants or houseflies. There, in very rare instances, species, like closely related species, can mate, but the offspring they produce are infertile, therefore their offspring are not considered a separate species. Carl Linnaeus also introduced the binomial nomenclature system, which is a way of naming organisms or species. He used the genus, which is a group of one or more related species, and the actual species itself, i.e., humans are called Homo sapiens, Homo being the genus, and sapien being the species. And the language used is Latin, which is a universal language. All scientists use Latin to name organisms. It just makes things easier. So if scientists in Germany were to say Homo sapien, scientists in Japan would know what they were talking about. The largest and most inclusive category of classification are kingdoms. And in modern biology, there are 6 kingdoms. We have the Archaeobacteria and Eubacteria, which were previously grouped into one kingdom called Monera. We have Protista, fungi, plantae, and Animalia. The characteristics of different kingdoms, we start off with Monera, which are classified as single-celled or a small colony of cells, all of which are prokaryotic. And prokaryotic means that they lack an organized nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles, and they also have a circular chromosome. And as I mentioned, Monera is now broken up into 2 separate kingdoms. We have the Archaeobacteria. These are bacteria that live in very extreme environments with very low oxygen, such as swamps or marshes, extreme temperature, hot springs, places that normal bacteria could not survive, or places of high salt concentrations, like the ocean. Eubacteria are just your everyday bacteria. They live in your body, on your skin, rotten food, in your dog's nose, pretty much everywhere. There are even eubacteria that are found in some extreme environments. So, the main difference between Archaeobacteria and Eubacteria is their biochemistry and the fact that they have an independent evolutionary history. We now move on to Protista. These are unicellular or multicellular organisms that do not have specialized tissues. These are eukaryotic. which means they have membrane-bound organelles, which are cellular structures. And Protista, this is a very, very diverse group of organisms. An example of a protist would be Plankton from SpongeBob SquarePants, if any of you watched that show. It was one of my favorites when I was younger. I still watch it and I'm almost 23, so. Anyways, our next kingdom is fungi. These are non-motile, which means they can't move, and plant-like. They can't make their own food, so they have to absorb nutrients from their environment. Their cell walls are made of a molecule called chitin. Examples of fungi include mushrooms, mold, and yeast. Without yeast, we wouldn't have beer, we wouldn't have bread. The world would not be a happy place. The next kingdom is Plantae. These organisms can make their own food by what is called photosynthesis. They are also eukaryotic, and their cell walls are composed of a molecule called cellulose. And the final kingdom is Animalia. All members of this kingdom are multicellular and eukaryotic. They can't make their own food. They are, however, capable of mobility. For example, if we want food, we drive to the grocery store and we get it. If a plant wants food, it's just got to sit there and wait until something comes in the soil. And the last thing I'm going to cover in this video are levels of organization. All organisms have, well, all matter have atoms. These atoms come together to form what are called molecules. I'll explain this a little bit in a lot more detail whenever I cover basic chemistry in probably my next video after next, sometime in the near future. But anyways, molecules come together to form what are called organelles. Organelles are a subunit of a cell and they are involved in a specific function within the cell. Organelles come together to form what is called a cell. And the cell is the fundamental unit of life. Must have metabolic chemicals and heredity information. And not all cells have organelles. Only eukaryotic cells do. Anyways, cells come together to form tissues, and tissues are groups of cells doing a specific function. Tissues come together to form organs. Organs come together to form an organ system, and organ systems group together to form an organism. In multicellular organisms, single cellular organisms are just one cell. But that is all I have for this video. I'll see you next time.